everybody, it's Shannon, Frugal Metal Mama, and I'm in the kitchen today and I'm making a batch of my copycat Clausen refrigerator pickles. And when I say I'm making a batch, I do a lot of canning. And so when I can, close my cabinet, sometimes things are just better not going through the process of processing on the stove through a canner. One reason is with pickles. I personally don't like soggy pickles. Who does? Everybody wants that crunch when you bite into them. My favorite brand of pickle from the store is Clausen's. I love Clausen's. They're the right amount of dill, they're kosher, they have that bite, and they're just delicious. And you can get them hot or plain. And in my house, we like both. So pickles go with everything. We eat pickles with everything in this house. And you know, at $3.69 a jar in the store, it goes pretty quickly. And this weekend, I went to my local farmer's market and I received about 16 pickling cucumbers, which are like about this long, and they're fat. They look just like the pickle, but they're a cucumber and they don't have a wax on it. So it's important to know that when you're trying to make pickles that you're not using regular cucumbers because they come with a protective wax on them. And pickling cucumbers don't. And they're actually just the right size for making like whole, if you want whole dill, or if you want to cut them in slices, or if you want to put them in spears. I personally like to cut them into quarters so that they're like spears. So the ingredients you're going to need today to do this is my recipe I used what jars I had on hand, and it's usually the quart jars. So I'm going to show you the finished product because I've already done it, but we're going to walk through it. But this is a can or jar of pickles. And my recipe made 4 quarts or 4 jars of pickles, and one jar is spicy, so the rest are just like normal. You'll notice if you go online, you see a lot of recipes using cider vinegar. I like to use distilled white vinegar with a 5% acidity. It's perfect for canning. Also, your Clausen pickles, if you look on the back of the jar, actually have white vinegar in them. If you use cider vinegar, they're going to be slightly sweet. And I am not a bread and butter pickle eater. I don't like sweet relish. I don't like sweet pickles. So I rather use the distilled. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to gather your jars. Make sure that they're clean or sterilized. You can run them through your dishwasher all by themselves on the high heat, and it will, sanitize them. Or you can process them in your steamer on the stove for 10 minutes. But that way is a little quicker, but I kind of, do it that way, especially if I buy them. I'm not going to use them right away. You have to clean them, make sure there's anything in there that's going to cause bacteria to form. So next thing you're going to do is you're going to gather your ingredients. You're going to need a pot, a large enough pot. I use this one. It's a big enough pot. It's a big enough pot for me. I use this pot, and you're going to need 4 let's see, wait a minute, 2 quarts of cold water. And 1 quart is 4 cups. So if you don't have a quart measurement, just measure out 8 cups of cold water. And I used water directly from my refrigerator. I have a distillery thing on the front of my fridge, see it? And I just used the water from there because it's purified and it's cold already. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to add a 1/2 cup of your white vinegar. So you're going to use a 1/2 cup of that, and you're going to pour it into the pot on the stove. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to use 2 tablespoons of pickling spice. Now you can buy it already pre-made. This jar cost me $4, by the way, but I buy it or I make it. I happen to make my own pickling spice, and pickling spice is basically dill seed, mustard seed, black peppercorns, bay leaf crushed up, and coriander seed. And that's what I use. And I use 2 tablespoons of that. I will include a recipe in a post on Twitter so that you can have that all written down already. So you're going to put 2 tablespoons of pickling spice into your pot. And you're going to put it on the stove and just kind of bring it to a boil because you want the heat to get everything warmed up. Then you're going to add a quarter cup of canning salt. Now this is very important that when you're making pickles that you're using the right kind of salt. You can't use table salt. Table salt is a different salinity. It'll come out disgusting. You can use coarse or fine. I use this brand. So for my recipe, that would be this, which is canning and pickling salt. And it's perfect for canning pickles and everything. And even on the back, there's a recipe for making it. But this recipe just doesn't really have a, whole mustard seed on it. So the recipe on the back is pretty good too. If you want fancy, you can buy some fresh dill weed from the store and put a sprig in each one. I don't, because I've got enough dill in there, and you'll find out why as we go through it. So inside your pot, you should have 2 quarts of water, 2 tablespoons of pickling spice, and then your quarter cup of the salt, of the Morton salt. Then of course the half a cup of the white vinegar. So you're going to bring that up to a heat where it's just starting to boil, and then turn it off or remove it from the stove and set it to the side. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your jars, okay? As you can see, I have them covered with a coffee filter. And the reason being is they have to sit on the counter. You're not processing them to be canned and put on a shelf for shelf life, because we want these to be crisp. And I don't use pickle crisp only because pickle crisp doesn't really work. I find it doesn't. I put it in there and my pickles are still soggy. This one, you'll get crisp pickles this way. So I get my jars ready, all 4 jars. I use coffee filters, or you can use, what do you call that, cheesecloth. And then I just used my rings to keep them on. So what you're going to do is I had 16 pickling cucumbers, and I cut the blossom ends off. So I cut the end off of all my pickles, and then I quartered my pickles into 4 slices. So cut down the middle, then cut in half again. And I filled my jar as evenly as I could with all my pickles. Doesn't matter if one jar has less or one jar has more. It's all about the stuff that's in it, and you'll see why. So then after you get your jars done and you've evenly put in your cucumber slices inside, I took 1 jar and I took a jalapeno and I cut 4 slices and I stuck them in the jar. Then what you're going to do is you're going to get a tablespoon of dill seed whole. Okay, this is dill seed. This is what it looks like. And I took like an 1/8 teaspoon or even a 4 teaspoon, and I just evenly put the same amount of dill seed in each jar. So I took a little bowl and I put my tablespoon in there, and then I used another measuring spoon, which in measuring talks we would call parts. So if it's equal parts, so a part could be a cup, a part could be a tablespoon, a part could be a pinch. A part is just a way of describing a certain, an amount to use. That you choose the amount. So I took my 1 tablespoon, and then I used a quarter teaspoon, and I evenly, a quarter here, quarter here, quarter here, quarter here, until my dill weed was completely gone, and it was all evenly distributed inside my jars. Next thing I did is I got garlic. Now, I used the already minced garlic. It kind of looks like this. And basically what you're doing is you're using 4 cloves of garlic. Now, if you're using minced garlic, a clove of garlic is equal to a half a teaspoon, and it'll even say on the side of the jar, even says there in little tiny print, that 1 clove is equal to a half a teaspoon. So if my recipe calls for 4 cloves, so I just did a half a teaspoon for each jar inside with the pickle. Then what you're going to do is I took a little bit of chili flake. Actually, it was like 1/4 of a teaspoon, a very small amount, and I threw that in the pot with the pickling spice just to give it a little tiny, I mean, it's not even, you won't even register in your mouth, but it just adds a depth of flavor. And I put that in there in the pot with the pickling spice. So once all your jars are filled with your garlic, your dill seed, your pickle, then it's time to add the brine. So what you're going to do is I took another pot. I put a colander on top that had a fine mesh. My colanders are kind of small, fine mesh, so it kind of looks like this. Okay, and I put that over the bigger pot, the other pot, and then I drained my brine through that into the other pot. And what it is you're separating the solids from the brine. You're going to have a little bit of dust, particles in there. That's fine. We just don't want the solids in there yet. So then after I'd done that, I put it in a pitcher container that was easier for me to pour. And I filled my jars with my my brine. So, and it should be enough. Sometimes it's a little bit left over depending on the size of jars you're using. And then I poured it over. Then I took the solids that were left and I evenly distributed the solids into all 4 jars so that each jar had the same amount of everything. Maybe not the same amount of pickle slices, but the same amount of herb inside. Once that's done, then all you got to do is take your piece of coffee filter, and then I laid it on top of my jar like so. And then I took my rings and then I clenched it down. And then I cut the excess off. So then it looks like this. It's a little bit neater. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to carefully set these jars somewhere in your kitchen where there is no direct sun. And you're going to let them sit there for 2 to 4 days. I usually let them sit for like 2. And then you can take the cloth, your cheesecloth or your filter off and put in your liner lid and then screw on the cap. And then you can put it in your fridge and you can have cold pickles. And the longer they're in the fridge, you know, they stay good for about 6 months. So if you make 4 jars, and if you're a big eater, you're going to eat through all 4 jars quickly. If not, and you're just a single person or it's just you and your husband, you know, the other jars will be in the fridge for later on. And just know that you have 6 months that they'll live. If you do happen to see any kind of fuzz growing inside your pickles, which it happens, if it's in the lid, you can scrape off and put a new lid. If any of that fuzz gets on any of the cucumbers, you have to remove the offended cucumber. It's going to be okay. It's not going to cause botulism. It's not going to cause you to get sick. It's just from the herbs and then the vinegar, and it will create that what they call scum, I guess. Because they're not processed on the stove, that's what will happen. But it doesn't happen all the time. I haven't had a problem with that before. But I know people who have, and so they just scrape it off. So you'll just set these in a corner. And in 2 days, you can actually start eating them. They should be crisp, soft, not too soft, but crisp enough like a pickle. And all that flavor is in there. I tasted my brine before I put it in there, and it was fabulous. I'm like, ugh, it's to die for. I'm like, yeah, this is Clausen's all right. And then, you know, of course, I've got the hot ones. You're going to want to mark your jar if people aren't able to see the jalapeno in there. So that is it. That's easy. It took me 20 minutes to do this. And you can do it too and make your own pickles at home. Especially if you're going to a farmer's market where they're giving you, you know, a certain amount of produce for a price. And I got 70 pounds for 12 bucks. I don't have any say in what they put in my box. So whatever's in there, I try to process because I don't want anything to go to waste, especially in a house where, you know, we don't got a lot of money. Our money has to go toward paying bills or medical bills and stuff. So we have to be frugal. And this is a great way to be frugal, to make your own pickles. If I can do it, you can. Stay tuned for the recipe. It will be posted. And if you have any questions, you know what you can do. Put it down in the comments or shoot me a message. Thank you for watching.